All right, today is Saturday. Getting a late start on this today. It's May 9th, around 3:40 in the afternoon. And I'm going to start reading what's the one today? It's the Wraith's Refrain Part 2. And this one is a continuation of the story that we went through the last few days or yesterday. The Wraith Refrain, Part 1 was a much different type of experience. The reason I'm starting late today, it's like almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I gave platelets this morning at the Red Cross nearby. So I wasn't even going to do this, but then I got some energy around now. I was just dicking around on Instagram, doing nothing, looking at videos of just stupid people rapping and maybe some new punk bands that were actually kind of interesting. I'm conflicted with Instagram. I'm only on it once every 2 weeks now because I get too addicted to it. And I'd rather be doing something productive, even if nobody pays attention to this stuff. It's still a part of my business. I look at it like that. So I was dicking around on Instagram for like 2 hours. Every Saturday when I give platelets, that's when I allow myself to go back on Instagram and dick around and watch stupid shit. But it is really addicting, man. I could have done it for another 4 hours. I found, well, I'll mention the one good punk band that I found because they just instantly caught my ear and they looked like they were like 15, 16 years old. I think they're from California. So I'll give them some appreciation if I can remember what they were called now. All right, so they're from LA. They're called XCOM, XCOMM. I don't even know if they have an actual album out, but you can look them up on Bandcamp. They have maybe 5 songs on the album available, and the rest of it's coming out May 22nd of this month. So that's something to look forward to. It's cool when you find a new punk band because with young kids, they look like they were in high school. And it was really cool, good video and just good energy to it. There's a couple other ones I found. The other cool band I found today on Instagram was 76 Black Drones from Brooklyn, New York. They were more of like just a 2-piece kind of maybe like the Black Keys type of thing, but I heard one song from them, so I can't speak to it, but they caught my ear too. It's just 2 guys, 76 Black Drones from Brooklyn, New York. On Bandcamp, I think they only have 1 album, but I really haven't done a lot of research on this band. Instagram's hit and miss, man. Sometimes it becomes about just looking at titties. Like, I went back on it earlier this morning, and like within the first 20 minutes, I'm looking at this Asian girl with huge tits, and she's just like naked. Like, almost like she had a bra on, but it was like a wet t-shirt almost. So yeah, it gets real weird. So I'm not trying to look at boobies, man, when I'm doing Instagram. But it's like, when I was stupid as a younger person, we would go to this strip club in Philly called Daydreams, I think. It's like as soon as you get off to Coney Palmyra Bridge, it's like right there. And as soon as you walk in and you pay the fee to get in the strip club, I think it was whatever, $10 at that point, like 20 years ago. And then there's this woman at the door and you're required to stick your face in her boobs as everyone walks in. It's very strange. And that was the only time I experienced like a strip club like that. Maybe it's because they don't want any cops in there. I don't know why they do that. I felt like it was some initiation. You walk into this strip club and they kind of say you have to stick your face in this woman's boobs, and it's kind of disgusting. Even if like, whatever. It's kind of cool, but it's also kind of gross because everyone's just motorboating. So like all your friends are doing it before you. I don't know if it still exists like that, but it was an interesting experience. Why am I talking about this? Instagram. Yeah, so I kind of allow myself every 2 weeks. Once every 2 weeks, I allow myself a few hours on Instagram before I get too distracted by just sexuality stuff. Or the music thing's actually pretty good because you can find good music on there and some funny, really funny, stupid videos. I guess that's the appeal of TikTok, but I've never done it on TikTok where I just spent 2 hours looking at random videos. I'm yet to be addicted to that one. But yeah, because I try to come off as like this struggling artist, but sometimes, and I am definitely a struggling artist. I don't make any money. I get no attention from anybody, and I get pretty frustrated in the tone of my voice. But sometimes you just gotta laugh at stupid shit, and Instagram is good for that. There's a couple funny people like rapping. This one dude was rapping about Costco hot dogs, and I thought that was one of the funniest things I've seen in a while. But yeah, I wasn't gonna do this today, but I felt like I had to do something. I didn't want to just go to sleep right now. I could just go to sleep right now because I am kind of groggy, but it's not. Then it messes up your whole sleep cycle. So I figured I'll do this for a couple hours, see how it goes. Maybe because I'm in a kind of a weird state right now, it'll come out better as I read this. When I was given platelets this morning, because it takes about 2 hours, they put you in this machine. They put two needles in you, and they kind of, one's receiving and one's like taking the platelets out, and then they return you in the other arm. So they take the platelets out of your blood and the plasma. Don't ask me to explain this stuff, but whatever it is kind of beneficial to certain people battling diseases. So if you can do it, go do it. The first time might be a little scary because you do feel kind of weird sitting there with your arms stretched and two needles in your arms. And I'm not a needle guy. I didn't think I would ever be able to do this, but now that I've done this maybe 5-6 times, and if you're able to do it, go do it. I know people can do it and actually make money off it too for plasma. I'm not sure how that works. I've never tried to actually go to one of those places and where they pay you for your plasma and all that shit. But yeah, Red Cross is cool. Go support them because they seem to do good work in not just the United States, but all around the world. So I don't mind doing it for whatever. I got a gift card out of it. So that's cool. I got some free clothing out of it. That was cool. And yeah, it's like the one thing I do. It's the only time I leave and interact in society for the last few months. Just that's like the only thing I'm doing right now besides all this stuff. So I figured I might as well keep this train rolling. Sometimes I'll get a goal in mind, and if I let it sit for a day or two, I'll forget about it. I'll lose the motivation. So I gotta keep pushing and keep reading these things and getting better with my voice acting, because you can make money off of that. If I'm able to get hours and hours of doing things like this and not being as nasally, not being as annoying with my tone or my subject matter, and maybe becoming more relying on the logical side of my brain, and I don't know. Because when I was giving the reason I brought that up, I was giving platelets today. They usually have a screen so you can watch Netflix or something for 2 hours while you're doing it. But this time I just wanted to listen to some of the recordings I made, the ones I made yesterday about the Wraith's Refrain I have trouble saying that word, the Wraith's Refrain. So I listened to part one while I was giving platelets today, and I wasn't completely disgusted by my voice, but I think I mumble a little and I don't complete my sentences clearly. I have bad enunciation, just like when I'm singing. I don't have good breath control, and I'll finish a line with a weakness of breath, so it doesn't really have any emotion or any relevance in the conversation, whether I'm speaking or singing. And I think I've had that for a while. Somebody told me that like years ago. You have to control your breath better. I remember watching a video with Kimbra, and she was like doing all these weird exercises before she was like going out on her show that night, and she would like do all these stretches to get her voice, because it is like a whole body thing. There's a scene in Always Sunny, because you know I'm going to bring up Always Sunny. I always bring up Always Sunny in Philadelphia. There's a scene with Dee and Charlie when they're trying to find their breath. I think it's the one with Rock, Flag, and Eagle. They're trying to find their breath. And she's like, you know, you got to go deep down to the diaphragm. I don't know, I'm not going to try to butcher the comedy of that scene, but it's pretty good. But yeah, voice acting can be a very financially viable avenue for somebody. Hopefully, if I can practice more and more. I'm not trying to be like, I don't know if I can do cartoon voices. I was trying to do a little bit when I was doing Man and Deer. I was kind of, when I read the Devil's Dialogue, I was like, "Hey, copper," like that stupid voice from those old crime dramas. But yeah, that's a skill that I guess you just have to keep practicing. But some people are just really gifted at that stuff. One of my friends could do Merrill Reese, if you know the Eagles announcer. He could do him really well, like perfectly mimic his inflections and tone. I don't think I really have that skill. Whenever I try to do an accent, it's like my brain goes limp. If I do a Russian accent, it doesn't sound anything like anything. So I think there's a Fred Armisen clip where he's like asking the audience to just shout out accents for him to do. Yeah, I think it's pretty enjoyable from what I remember. But yeah, I'm not really skilled on that stuff. Maybe I just need to let loose more because I take this too seriously and I get too anxious, like, because I'm so set on doing this thing and moving to the West Coast and actually meeting people to do this. And it's like I see the path, but I don't know how to get on that road at all. So yeah, it's a little bit of that, and I try to keep out of these conversations because I noticed I was talking about Facebook for like 20 minutes, and on the last recording, Facebook banned me for no reason. I haven't had an account in 15 years, and it is a righteous gripe. Like I am kind of frustrated at that. But I probably shouldn't talk about it for 20 fucking minutes. And I'm pretty sure I mentioned it before in a separate post, actually, when it first happened. So yeah, I keep bringing up a lot of redundant areas of frustration. So I'll try not to do that as much and just be more free and just even more than I am now, because everything's off the cuff. But it's like this hamster wheel in my brain will spin around and tell me to say these words, and it's so much redundancy. Isn't there a Green Day song, Redundant? I cannot speak, I lost my voice, I'm stupid and redundant. So that's a lot of it. I'm really working on that now for the rest of these episodes. And I think I'll get better, because how many times can you say the same thing and eventually you're going to get sick of it, even if nobody listens to this shit. Eventually I'll get sick of it myself. I'm already kind of sick of it. Redundant Green Day. And I started reading a lot of lyrics while I'm doing this. I like reading lyrics because I never do. Um, I never pay attention to lyrics, like very rarely at least. Sometimes we're living in repetition. We're living in repetition. See, I still remember this. 1997, redundant. Now the routine's turning to contention, like a production line going over and over and over. Roller coaster. Now I cannot speak. I lost my voice. I'm speechless and redundant, 'cause I love you's not enough. I'm lost for words. Yeah, it's a good song. So that's my main goal right now, besides being able to read my screenplays in a better tone to keep people's interest, to keep my own interest, because I'm listening to myself after I record these and trying to see what I can do to get better, because I know it's hard to keep anyone's interest for 2 seconds. Um, Instagram's the perfect. I'm glad I was talking about that in the beginning. Like, you're on Instagram, it's almost like you're the judge and jury as you're going through all these reels of videos, like, and there's people doing comedy bits or playing music or showing their artwork, and it's like you have to judge it. Is it worthy of putting a heart or leaving a comment with fire, 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 fire? And so it can be kind of weird like that. But I just overthink a lot of shit. I think most people just go on TikTok just to watch stupid shit and to release for an hour or two. And people like myself might just get too addicted to it. But it is a waste of time. I could have seriously, like, in my former self, I would have just watched Instagram videos for the next 5 hours and just dozed off during it. So I'm trying to do at least one thing productive today. And all right, let me kind of set up this story. When we left in part one, again, this is a continuation of Hilda and Flora's story. This is the Wraith's Refrain part 2. Hilda and Flora are still going to play a part in this. When we left part 1, the last shot, we kind of saw Flora, the ghost of Flora, with her like neck wound after Hilda had sliced her fucking throat in part 1, in that one dark scene in the piano room. So now, whenever we see Flora in this one as a ghost, her spirit has that throat gash just to kind of make it look all gnarly and to remind people how she died in the first one. So her spirit never got kind of peace. You remember later in that episode, after Hilda kills her, she consumes her with these black bugs. But at the end, Hilda gets consumed herself by the lake, goes back to the lake, and I kind of said, well, what would happen to Flora at this point? So I put Flora back in the piano room, playing the piano by herself, kind of like this really somber, emo ghost, because she knows she's like trapped maybe for eternity, because she'll never get peace now in the afterlife. That's what I was going for. Don't talk to me about like the afterlife, the philosophy of spirits and what happens. You know, you can make up whatever you want, man. That's the beauty of mysterious concepts that nobody has the answers for. You could just make up whatever the hell you want to. So that's where my brain went, because I needed this storyline. I didn't want to end this story. Originally, this was all one big screenplay, but then I had to split it up, and then I got inspired to kind of approach this completely different. So I'm going to get right into it now. For real. This is the Wraith's Refrain Part 2. And it's episode number 6. I'm very excited for the one I'm doing tomorrow. Episode 7 is called Marathon. And it's about a chain-smoking marathon runner. And it's kind of inspired by Seinfeld characters. I picture like at least two of the characters. I picture Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Jason Alexander. Those are like the two people I have in my head when I read the script. So I'm excited to read that one, either tomorrow or the day after, depending if I can finish this whole thing today. This one is 49 pages, and it should read easier than the one yesterday. The Wraith's Refrain Part 1 was like set, well, we started with the Druids and the Roman warriors fighting in 60 AD, and then we made it to the 1800s. So we followed this curse of the lake up until maybe the 1930s. I think that's where we left off, when the townspeople came to burn the witch, and Hilda got consumed by the curse of the lake, and that's where she rests now, at the depths of the lake. I think that was around 1930 when I set that, because she probably aged a good deal. So we're going to start part 2 back in Scotland. We're still in Scotland. And there we go. We're fading into the cottage again. Remember, it got a lot of fire damage and water damage that night. So the sun is shining down on this countryside near the cottage as we notice the fire-damaged cottage roof as a somber waltz plays from inside the piano room. We're now drifting through the calm lake water. So we go right back to the lake as the somber waltz continues to play. Back at the cottage, we move towards the side window as the waltz continues to play from the piano, but we don't know who's playing it. Now inside the cottage in the piano room, we're going to relive the final scene of part 1, which I talked about, the ghostly figure of Flora. She's still looking like she's 18, but the only difference is she's a spirit with blood all over her and this bloody gash on her throat, and she's at the piano bench playing this somber waltz. These small black bugs are migrating around her at the piano bench, crawling all over her body as she plays a C minor chord. More and more bugs now invade her body until they envelop her in a veil of darkness. So besides the curse of just being this spirit with no peace, she's dealing with all these fucking bugs that Hilda cursed her with. All right. Now we're doing a time cut back to the lake. That was an introduction sequence there, just to remind people of what the story was in part 1. But now we're moving to 1970s, and the bright sun is shining over this small tour group standing on the shoreline of the lake, dressed in 70s attire, and superimposed Scotland, 1970. A few of these tourists are taking photos with Polaroid cameras, while a few others stare at their reflections in the calm water. The tour guide, male in his 20s, a local Scottish accent, points towards the lake. Tour guide will begin this dialogue. I know this may look like just an ordinary lake, but legends dating back to the first settlements in this region all make claims of a devious entity that slumbers underneath these specious, calm waters. Derek, in his 40s, upper class American, puts his arm around his wife Joanna, 40s. So these are American tourists with the tour group. And his wife Joanna, also in her 40s, dressed in an extravagant sundress and expensive sunglasses. Derek, aren't you glad we chose Scotland? The castles, the green pastures, the folklore. Joanna, in a snide tone, you're golfing. He hugs her from behind. Derek, just a brief hiatus, my love. He kisses her on the cheek while the tour guide leads the group away from the lake. Tour guide, even up to this very century, there are tales from from locals regarding the witch of the lake. Ghostly moans echo as Derek and Joanna gaze towards the calm lake water while the rest of the tourists follow the tour guide away. But no need to worry, folks. We will be back at the hotel before any such witch can lay claims to any of our souls. The group laughs as Derek and Joanna stand alone by the lake and stare at their reflections in the water. Derek: people back home just don't appreciate folklore like this anymore, Joe. Joanna, scoffing: back home they would have built a water park around this lake. We move closer towards the calm lake water as they catch up to the rest of the group. So yeah, I listened to a podcast about the Loch Ness Monster, and maybe it's like a big tourist trap, really. That's all it really ever was. So this is kind of the same thing. This tour group, it's probably one of the local legends in this area. So the tour guide is going to take people to this lake because it has that folklore attached to it. Maybe it got more famous over the years after that whole shit with Hilda. But you know how folklore goes. You don't know if it's true or not. Just like Sawney Bean and all the other Jersey Devil ones that, take it for what you want it to be. All right, now we're outside the cottage as the tour guide is leading the group towards the front door, past a garden of weeds, wild herbs, and blue flowers. The tour guide: this cottage, left abandoned nearly a century ago, is currently being refurbished to its original design when it was first constructed back in the early 1800s. A somber waltz is playing on the piano from inside. Derek and Joanna notice the piano music and walk away from the group towards the music, towards the back of the cottage. Now they're at the piano room window. From outside, they're listening to the piano music and peeking through the open window just as the music stops. So it actually was being played on this piano, that same piano from before. Because, Flora is now haunting this fucking house. And don't ask me questions. Why didn't they just knock this cottage down and have this bad witch inside? I don't know. They just didn't. They decided to keep it there as a reminder to everyone about the evil of the lake. I don't know. Because you would think if it was half burnt anyway, somebody would probably just go and burn it, but it's still there after 40 years. A shadowy figure now approaches Derek and Joanna from behind, while the old window violently slams shut in front of them like a jump scare. They barely have time to move their heads out of the way and fall backwards onto the dirt. This shadowy figure, just a small, friendly stray dog, licks Joanna's face, and she doesn't appear too excited to make this new friend. So these are two really rich American tourists, and they're just out there to have some fun. And we'll continue the story now. They're not major characters in this, but they're the ones that, well, you'll see how it goes. I don't have to explain every little thing just yet. Inside the cottage, Derek and Joanna walk in through the front door, passing carpenters, stoneworkers, and other contractors who now measure the flooring, gut a rotted wall, and cut wooden siding with a circular saw, as the cottage restoration is well underway. So that's another reason they wanted to restore this to the original way it looked in the 1800s. Derek and Joanna now enter the piano room and explore on their own, while the tour guide speaks to the rest of the group in the background. So as the tour guide's speaking in the scene, Derek and Joanna is just on their own. They're not really paying attention to him. They're just exploring this room. The tour guide: we were very lucky to be granted access during this refurbishing. Derek runs his hand across an old dresser cabinet, then flips through some old, dusty sheet music books. Tour guide: Most cottages of this era were designed to withstand the harsh wind and rain of Scotland's sometimes rather hectic climate. Joanna is examining an old, cracked standing lamp and faded rune symbols carved into the wall behind it. Tour guide continues. As you can see by the damaged roof above, Derek walks by a side wall with a large, partially faded triquetra symbol drawing. So the one that Hilda drew all those years ago is still there, partially still there on the wall. Tour guide. Some storms can later ruin even the strongest of structures. Derek then spots the upright piano, the same piano from part 1, that same one that they stole from the witch's shack. The piano shows some damage but appears in overall decent shape, and Derek's instantly intrigued by it. He gently touches the unique carvings and intricate rune designs on the legs, while Joanna reads his eyes and sighs to herself. Joanna, don't you say it, Derek. Don't you even think it. He moves his fingers on top of the dusty keys. Joanna. I mean it this time, Derek. He wipes a thick layer of dust off the bench and sits, his fingers slowly moving over the keys. He then presses one key and grins wide, gazing up towards Joanna with puppy dog eyes. She rolls her eyes as he plays a nice piano run. Derek. Amazing how this is still somewhat in tune. You could put a little scene there to extend this. Maybe he plays for 30, 40 seconds, and he's like, he can't believe that the piano still sounds that good. She sits down on the bench next to him. Joanna. Maybe someone worked on her recently. He then plays a snippet from Gustav Holst's The Planets. So we're going back to Laurie, just as a nod to the Laurie episode, how Gustav Holst's The Planets was a big part of that story. So whenever I could, I try to connect stuff like that. It's not really that important, but I think it's kind of cool. Derek. I've never heard an antique quite sound like this. I've never heard an antique quite sound this alive before. Across the room, the tour guide is leading the group of tourists towards the hallway. Tour guide. Ladies and gentlemen, if you please follow along, we should still make our lunch reservation. Derek stays behind and plays another short selection from The Planets as Joanna rises and walks towards the group. Joanna. Come on, Derek. Derek's lost in a complete trance as he continues to play, while a very quick flash of Flora's ghost appears seated next to him on the piano bench. Just, you want to make her as grisly as possible without being obscene about it. Maybe there's still blood, like, boiling from her neck, still pouring out. All right. Joanna yells again towards Derek as she exits the room. Joanna, now Derek. All right. He finally stops playing, rises, and walks out of the room as Flora just sits there in silence. Moments later in the hallway, what I was trying to go for, and I don't know if it works completely, as soon as she hit the piano keys, like, Flora appears, like her ghost would appear whenever the piano, you could kind of put something like that, yeah. That kind of summons her from whatever else she's doing in the spirit world. I don't know, man. I think that works, because it's kind of a trope throughout this entire story. So the piano is connected to Flora. I don't know how to compare that besides saying it like that. Let me see if I can explain it later as we move along in this story. Moments later in the hallway, a Scottish carpenter is whistling a cheerful tune as he cuts through a large plank of wood with a circular saw. He gazes up at the hallway mirror just as Flora's ghostly reflection flashes, blood flowing out of her throat gash. The man trips backwards in fright and bangs hard against the wall. Directly above him, some sharp-edged rubble comes loose, falls, and slices right across his neck. He drops to the floor, convulses, and bleeds out, while two other workers run to tend to him as he takes his last breath. So, page 6, we already have a death, so that's good. And this innocent carpenter saw Flora and just freaked the fuck out. Now we're outside of the piano room, drifting high into the bright sunny sky as the somber waltz plays from the piano inside. So, I don't know, there's a couple things here that people would ask, well, if they keep hearing the piano music, wouldn't that freak the people out working on the house? And wouldn't they like get rid of the piano at some point? I don't know, maybe sometimes they hear it, sometimes they don't. If that doesn't make sense. I don't really know what else could really explain that. If they're working on this cottage and from time to time they kind of suspect it's haunted, because they probably know about the legend of Hilda and the Lady of the Lake and all these old stories from, it's only 40, 50 years ago. So maybe they just don't want to mess around with these objects. And they're just getting started now. Maybe it's their first day working on this house. So that could be a good explanation for this. It was undisturbed until this very day when these tourists happened to show up. All right. Now we're moving from Scotland. Goodbye, Scotland. And we're going to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, as we see the Philadelphia skyline and snow falling over it. So it's the dead of winter, and we see superimposed on the screen Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 6 months later. We're headed down a city street in an expensive part of the city, maybe a suburb of Philly, and we see Derek's mansion as snow is falling through. Snow is falling on this street of expensive mansions in a very wealthy area of the city, like I just said. Two grunts are lugging the upright piano wrapped in protective blankets through the front door of Derek's mansion. Derek's mansion. So this is a continuous. The two grunts lug the upright piano past fancy furniture and lavish 1970s decor, while Derek watches them anxiously. Derek: easy does it now, fellas. You don't want to know how much this baby costs to ship overseas. They don't appear very interested as they set the piano up against the wall next to the piano bench and remove the blankets. Derek: perfect, just perfect. Much obliged, gentlemen. He tips them some cash and they walk out the front door. And now he's left alone, gazing at that piano proudly, as it looks to have been fully restored at this point. Joanna walks in the room with her arms crossed, not quite sharing his enthusiasm. Joanna: would have had a down payment on that shore house. Derek: oh, pish posh, Joe. Just listen to this pristine machine. It's one of a kind. He sits down on the piano bench and plays a peaceful selection from Gustav Holst's The Planets once again, while falling in love with the piano, just like he did when he first played it in Scotland. So he had this piano shipped back to his home, and he probably had it restored, and now it's finally ready to be played in his living room. Flora's ghostly face suddenly flashes behind him as he messes up the next few chords, his fingers now completely out of sync. So she can have physical effect on people too, or mental. Her spirit can affect people in the material world, because we're all just spirits in the material world. Derek has to stop playing at this point, like he feels Flora's sinister presence next to him. Derek: I guess I'm a little rusty. He plays a C minor chord as Joanna sighs and walks out of the room. Her only motivation is, she didn't want anything to do with this fucking piano. Whatever money they spent to ship this piano across the pond to Philly from Scotland, she would have rather done something else, like is understood in the dialogue earlier. Now we're in Derek's dream. And some of these scenes that he's dreaming about are taken from part one of this story. So how is he able to dream about this stuff? It's because he's the one that summoned Flora, and he's haunting him even in his dreams now. And this is the first night that they just had the piano delivered. This is the first night that the piano is now in their house. So he's dreaming about Hilda when she was 60 with her white hair neatly braided in her fancy dress as she plays the Wraith's Refrain on the piano. Now we're outside back at the lake in Scotland at night as fire is encircling the entire lake and shoreline and human body parts emerge from the water. Now we're inside the cottage in the piano room at night as Flora, 18, the spirit of Flora with the bloody gas on her throat, is at the piano playing a somber waltz. Hilda, 18, notices her from across the room, opens her mouth wide, launching hundreds of small black bugs towards her. The bugs are now sucking Flora's flesh and blood until she disintegrates completely. So we're reliving that moment just to remind the audience what happened. I thought it was good to put that there. It would only take 30 seconds to show that scene again. Because that's the curse of the two twin sisters. That's a vital part of this story. So I figured it's good to show it to remind people who, whether you saw part one or not, you would still be able to follow this story because of that. Now Derek is still dreaming of the grave site where Hilda's 10 years old and she's sleeping upon her mother's grave as a triquetra symbol is drawn in the dirt around her. Now we're inside the cottage at the piano room at nighttime as a headless Flora plays Pachelbel's canon seated at the piano as snakes are crawling out from her neck. So that's kind of like he's dreaming about Hilda's dream. It's weird there, but it's all connected to this curse. So, it's all fair in this type of an experience. Now he's dreaming about Hilda in the piano room, and she's writing notations onto a piece of sheet music when she was writing the Wraith's Refrain back then in part one. She completes her composition and hides the paper in the hidden compartment on the leg of the piano. And then she continues playing more of the Wraith's Refrain. Now we're back at the lake as Hilda is 18, levitating over the water, and then she's slicing 3 long vertical gashes into her torso with a sharp rock. As her blood flows down her entire body and down into the calm lake water. So these are very quick scenes, almost just like flashes of flashbacks, memories. This is probably what Flora is thinking about every time, night and day, because she's haunted by this curse that she can't get free from. That's her reality now. The last scene of this dream montage is inside the bedroom of the cottage where Flora is 18 and she's rising up from her bed in a panic, breathing heavily, while raging fires erupt all around her. Hilda, also 18, is levitating towards her through the flames. So we're representing that scene where Hilda first becomes cursed by the lake, by the entities inside, when Flora could sense it because of their twin connection. That's the end of the dream sequence. A lot of these are just rehashes. I guess you could just use the footage from the first part or kind of make it even more cryptic in a dream type of setting. Now Derek rises up from his bed in a panic after having this nightmare, sweating and breathing heavily, while Joanna snores next to him with a fancy silk sleeping mask over her eyes. He hears a somber waltz playing from the piano downstairs and steps out of bed. Now Derek is walking slowly through the darkness of the hallway as the somber waltz plays louder from the piano downstairs. In the living room, we get a very quick glance of Flora's ghostly fingers playing the somber waltz on the piano. Now Derek's bare feet creep slowly down the stairs as the piano music continues. The music suddenly stops as he pauses, confused, just as Flora's ghostly hands reach out behind him. So now she's like right behind him on the steps. Derek now stands barefoot in front of the piano and gently runs his fingers over the keys. Kind of confused. He's like, why was I hearing piano music after that weird dream he just had? So he's kind of in a state of I was going to say state of shock, but he's just very confused right now. He's now yawning and sitting down on the piano bench, rubbing his hands together for warmth. Then he's lightly hitting a few keys. Flora suddenly appears behind him, blood erupting from her neck wound. She bends down and licks his ear with her bloody tongue, as little black bugs crawl out of her mouth and inside his ear. He hits a few more keys on the piano, then struggles to breathe and coughs in a panic. He falls over onto the carpet, gasping for air, as hundreds of black bugs crawl out of his nose, ears, and from his mouth. He chokes to death on the floor as the bugs cover his entire body. We drift closer to his pale face, like all the blood has been drained from his body, while Flora calmly sits down on the piano bench and plays a somber waltz. You might, I don't know, maybe you could design another piano melody, like Hilda had her Wraith's Refrain. Maybe in part 2, Flora has a repetitive type of a waltz, because I don't know, I just always pictured her playing this really sad, somber waltz at the piano. Maybe somebody can compose something like that too. Or it can just be some generic thing. It doesn't have to be a big thing, because it's not a part of this story. All right. But, it could be cool when you have a soundtrack. You have the Wraith's Refrain, then you could have Flora's theme, and just to make it more organized like that. All right, so now we just saw Derek die on the floor. That's another death. So we've had 2 deaths already in the first 10 pages. These characters are just coming and going at this point. Now we're moving 30 years later. We're still at Derek's mansion in the daytime, as bright sunlight is shining down on a sign on the front lawn. Estate sale, last day, everything half price. Superimposed, 2000. So we already know we're in Philadelphia. We just put the year 2000. We're on page 10 now. So after about 30 years, the upright piano stands against the same wall, covered up in a fancy cloth sheet, as treasure hunters walk around the room inspecting paintings, statues, vases, and jewelry. So it's an estate sale inside this rich mansion. Celia, in her 50s, removes the fancy cloth to reveal the antique piano and instantly falls in love with it. She gently touches the piano body and legs, then moves her fingers across the top of the keys. So you want to make this very, very tense at this point. If she were to touch and play one of the keys, then, that's like Flora's coming to get her at that point. That's kind of what I was going with. It's summoning, as soon as you play the piano, it summons the spirit of Flora, and she can decide how she wants to handle that situation. She decided to put an end to Derek for some reason. All right. So Celia's thinking about buying this piano. She walks to the estate sale cashier, a woman in her 60s. And she's kind of like an old, grizzled gypsy woman, an experienced negotiator. Celia, what kind of deal can you give me on that piano? The cashier walks to the piano. Estate sale cashier. Ah, you find hidden treasure there, yes? She touches the intricate carvings on the piano legs and eyes Celia, estate sale cashier. 500 firm. Celia mulls it over. Celia, is that including delivery? Estate sale cashier. No, you handle delivery. Celia ponders some more while gently moving her fingers over the keys. So another opportunity to create some suspense there. Estate sale cashier is one-of-a-kind piece. We now drift closer to the rune symbols on one of the piano legs where the hidden compartment is. Estate sale cashier. Very special vibrations. Now, later that day, we are inside Celia's row home. I don't know, it's in Philly. This whole second part now is all based in Philadelphia. I'm picturing, the row homes in a lot of Philly suburbs, or, I'm not sure what part of the city it would be, but whatever, just a row home, that's all you really need to know. Celia's inside, gazing proudly at her new upright piano against the side wall, so she did buy it. She's blowing dust off the piano top, then lowering a finger towards a key, getting closer and closer and closer, but she doesn't hit the key, as the phone suddenly rings from the kitchen, startling her before she hits it, and she scurries out of the room. Now we're some months later in Celia's living room, as it's Christmas time now. A modest Christmas tree stands in the middle of the room with some wrapped presents underneath, as festive wreaths and stockings hang on the walls. Celia covers the upright piano with a Christmas-themed tablecloth and places some Christmas trinkets and a vase of flowers on top. So I know people would say, she's had this piano for months now and she'd never played it. But I think it was like she just liked the look of it. She's probably not a pianist. She's not a musician. She bought the piano just because it looked like a really unique piece of antique furniture. That would be my response to that. So she's lifting the tablecloth. So really this piano just became like another piece of furniture, really. That's all she really has done with it over these last, 3-4 months. All right, so Celia is lifting the tablecloth just enough to dust off the piano. And she's humming jingle bells to herself as she does this. Her fingers moving closer towards the piano keys. Celia speaking to herself. Oh, George Jr. is just going to love this. The smoke alarm beeps before she hits the key, and she jumps back in a panic. So there's another jump scare there. Because I don't know if the audience would know at this point what I'm setting up, that Flora will only appear almost like The Ring. You watch the video of on television and it summons this evil fucking spirit to come get you. Or I'm probably forgetting other horror stories that have a similar type of appeal like this. I don't know if there's any quite to this level where you play a piano and it will summon this evil spirit that's been trapped for the last 100 years and cursed with this piano. I don't know if there's anything like that. There probably is, because everything's kind of been done at this point. But so now Celia's running out of the kitchen as the smoke alarm beeps. Or she's running to the kitchen, sorry. And she's screaming to herself, the chestnuts, the chestnuts. And as she rushes towards the kitchen, we drift ominously closer to the piano keys. Now it is nighttime. A few nights later, or this is later that night. Yeah, Celia is singing Dominic the Donkey with her family in front of the Christmas tree. Her son George in his 30s, his wife Patricia in her 30s, and their twin boys. Because I always have twins in these stories, so I might as well continue that. George Jr. and Lucas, they're like 10 years old. The whole family singing together near the Christmas tree, having a swell old time. Hey, chingity ching, hee haw, it's Dominic the donkey. Chingity ching, hee haw, the Italian Christmas donkey. They do it in a much more merry fashion than I just did. So they finish this song and they're cheering, while George Jr. walks to the piano, lifts up the tablecloth, and gently slides his fingers over the keys. George Jr. Nana, can I play my song now? Celia. Let's wait until after we open the gifts. George Jr. whining. Aw, come on, Nana. Patricia. George, don't pester your Nana. Lucas. Yeah, don't be a pest. You're already such a weak little dork. George Jr. Shut up, Lucas. George Jr. grabs a green and white Philadelphia Eagles like Nerf football off the floor and tosses it hard at Lucas, who tosses it back just as hard. The ball misses its intended target and knocks over a vase of flowers on the piano top. Patricia quickly walks over with some napkins and wipes off the water before it hits the piano. Patricia. Guys, no more football in the house. To Celia. I think it's best we keep these little... So she's speaking to Celia now. I think it's best we keep those little animals away from your piano, Ma. Celia snickered. Celia. Oh, it's fine, Patty, really. Patricia's elbow... Patricia's elbow is grazing over the piano keys ever so slightly as she wipes off the remaining water. George Jr. launches the football at his father, seated on the couch, who catches it and tosses it back, but George Jr. drops it. George, come on, how you gonna make the Eagles with hands like that? Patricia walks over and grabs the football, while father and son race each other to fetch it. Patricia, I said no football in the house, guys. George, please stop encouraging them. George Jr. jumps on top of his father and playfully wrestles with him. Lucas quickly joins in and elbows his father in the gut, while George playfully fends both of them off. George, hey, 2 against 1. Not fair, guys. Celia smiles as they all wrestle by the Christmas tree, and then she covers the piano up with the Christmas-themed tablecloth. This whole scene changed. Originally, I was going to have it be a very horrific Christmas. One of the kids will accidentally hit the piano, or maybe the mother did when she was cleaning it, and then all of a sudden the ghost of Flora is just standing there by the Christmas tree with her bloody neck. And then later on they would get in a car accident because Flora appears in their car, and it'd be like the most horrific Christmas night of all time. But yeah, I figured I kind of used that later, and I was like, I can't have 2 scenes like that, so I got rid of it. So this entire scene is kind of like, and I mentioned this in part 1, this entire scene kind of plays on that Final Destination thing, where the crowd, the viewing audience is kind of in that spot now where they know if you hit the piano, Flora is going to appear, and she's probably going to kill some people. So that is more of the suspense of this scene. Is this family going to be cursed as well because of this fucking piano that came all the way from Scotland that somehow ended up in their house now? So that's what I'm going for. But luckily, nobody hits the fucking piano. We're moving pretty quickly now. That was around, the year 2000. We're going 10 years now into the future. And we're still at Celia's row home. But Celia is much older. She's in her 60s now. And she's inside her home. She's taking the random trinkets off the piano top, which is now covered by another tablecloth. She moves all these little trinkets to a nearby table, removes the tablecloth, and looks at the piano, which appears in exactly the same condition as we saw before. Superimposed at this point is 2010, so we're 10 years later. This piano has been sitting in this woman's house for 10 years, and she never played it. Two burly men, Doug and Gary, step through the front door and carefully lift the piano onto a hand truck. Doug: "Thanks again, Mrs. Savolo." She smiles and opens the front door for them. Outside Celia's row home, Doug and Gary push the piano towards their box truck while Celia walks by their side. Celia: "I'm telling you, boys, you got a really nice piece there. Don't know why I even bought it in the first place back then, but it hasn't been played once." Doug runs his fingers over the piano keys, then plays chopsticks as he laughs to himself. Doug to Gary: "Get it? Like that Tom Hanks movie." Gary doesn't quite find the humor and rolls his eyes, while a very quick image of Flora flashes behind him, then disappears. Gary towards Doug: "Would you just help me load this, please?" Now Gary speaking to Celia: "You sure you don't want anything for it, Mrs. Savolo?" Celia: "You boys just find it a good home." She walks back towards her row home as the two men lug it up the truck ramp. Celia: "Shame to let a beautiful piece like that go unplayed for this long." Gary: "Thanks again. Say hi to George for us." Celia: "Will do." Doug is now securing the piano to the side of the box truck, inside the truck, with some straps. Then he steps down as Gary pulls down the back door. As soon as they do that, a somber waltz is lightly played from inside the truck. As Doug and Gary eye each other curiously, Gary slowly lifts open the back door just as the music stops. He shrugs his shoulders, then pulls the door back down. I guess the other plot hole might be, she had that piano in her house the whole time, and she has grandkids, and no one ever touched the piano keys. I don't know. It's not that far-fetched. A lot of people have pianos in their homes just for like decoration almost. They don't know how to play it, or they'll just play it once and never play it again. In this scenario, this family got lucky as shit because they never hit the fucking piano keys. So I don't think it's that hard to believe. She probably just used it as a furniture top. So maybe she didn't. And maybe this piano has one of those things where you can close it like over the keys. Sometimes they have this protective covering over the piano keys. And she just used it as like a piece of furniture. And luckily, no one ever really got into music in her family. So I don't think it's that far-fetched. Believe me, I think about these things, and I'm sure there's things I'm not thinking of that somebody else will mention that would be like, "That's hard to believe, man." Yeah, well, if it's really that glaring of a plot hole, something can be changed later if it really has to. But I think I covered most of the bases here. All right, now we're at Doug and Gary's storage locker. I wrote this scene because of my love for Storage Wars, really. I was probably watching that show a lot. We're drifting through a small storage space full of furniture, vinyl records, old stereo equipment, metal road signs, and other flea market items as Doug and Gary push the piano against the free wall. Gary catches his breath and sits on the piano bench, while Doug grabs a samurai sword off a nearby desk. Doug: "Check it out. Found this in the trash last week." He pulls the sword out from the casing. Doug: "Can you believe somebody threw this thing out?" Flora suddenly appears next to Doug, but he doesn't notice. So Flora can be seen when she wants to be seen as a spirit, but most of the time, I guess people don't even realize she's there. Maybe they just feel this weird type of sinister presence in the room, that type of a horror trope. Gary: "Would you put that sword away before you cut your jugular?" So now Doug is putting the sword back into the casing as Gary rises from the piano bench and cleans the piano with a towel, appearing very happy with the find. Gary, Celia was right. He hit some random keys trying to play the Godfather theme. Gary, really is a nice piece. Flora suddenly appears behind Gary on the bench and is evil-eyeing him. Yeah, maybe she's actually happier when, wherever she is when she's not, when the piano is dormant, maybe she's happier, maybe she is able to rest a little. But as soon as the piano is played, she appears and she's kind of like bloodthirsty for some reason. I'm not really sure what else I can say about that to make it make the most sense, but I think that's good enough at least. Now Doug is driving the box truck down a rural lake road, while Gary is tuning the radio in the passenger seat, but he's finding nothing but static. Gary, I'm thinking we get at least 500 for it, easy. He keeps trying to find a working station, only to hear more piercing static. Gary, if we try Manayunk, who knows? Maybe a few grand. He gives up and turns the radio off. Doug, you just gotta find that right buyer, my friend. Flora suddenly appears in the middle of the road, covered head to toe in blood, even bloodier than we've seen her before. Gary, holy shit, Doug. Doug swerves to avoid her, but drives right into the lake, as Flora watches the truck sink down with a stoic expression. So another curse of the lake again. I kind of wanted to show that again. Might as well have a death scene with the fucking lake to kind of connect to the first part of this. Very quickly from that death scene, now Gary and Doug are dead. So we've had how many people die in the first 15 pages? 4 people. It is like Final Destination, kind of. That was probably an inspiration as I was thinking of these scenes. How do I make these people die? A few weeks later, we are outside of Doug and Gary's storage locker as a fast-talking auctioneer in his 40s stands in front of Gary and Doug's locker. Auctioneer, I hear 400, who's got 5? I get it, it's in Philadelphia, so I don't know, would they have a Delco accent? I hear 400. I can't even do a Delco accent. Maybe it's just my natural voice. Who's got 5? Wawa. A handful of bidders stand nearby bidding on the locker. Man in a trucker hat raises his hand to bid, but man in a leather jacket raises his hand right after him. Auctioneer continues. 600, now 7. Jake stands nearby next to his wife, Nancy. They're both in their 30s. While the bidding war continues around them, Jake then raises his arm up confidently towards the auctioneer. Jake, 1,200. Auctioneer, 1,200 is a new bid. Will anyone go 13? The other bidders keep their hands down. Auctioneer, let me hear 13. Brief pause, and then the auctioneer closes the auction. 1,200 going once, going twice. Moments later, we are inside the storage locker now that Jake and Nancy just won in the auction. They're scanning Doug and Gary's treasures that they collected inside throughout the years. Various pieces of furniture, sports memorabilia, concert posters, vinyl records, road signs, all that flea market stuff, old stereo equipment. Nancy is running her fingers over the upright piano. Nancy, hey Jake, come check this out. Jake walks over and runs his hands over the intricate carvings of the piano. Jake, nice. Nancy, maybe 100 years old? Jake, sure, maybe even older. You can tell it's been worked on some though. So they're both very knowledgeable people about antiques. They probably buy storage lockers as a business or whatever. As you'll find out in the next scene, Jake is lowering his finger now down towards the piano key, slowly and slowly. Before he can press the piano key, the samurai sword slides off the desk nearby and startles both of them. They regain their composure, and Jake begins dusting off the piano body with his shirt. Jake, not quite gonna pay for Ben's tuition, but it's a good find. Now we are a few days later, and Jake is the owner of a thrift store warehouse. You know, one of those big warehouse thrift stores that has a little bit of everything. I used to go thrifting all the time in Philadelphia around 2016, around that time period. I would find places like that, these big warehouses that look like they haven't been explored in a while, or part of the store looked like that. Some of this store would be all neat and organized, and then there'll be these other sections that are just piles and piles of records. And I would spend hours just going through these records. Like almost every weekend I would do that. Philadelphia is a pretty good place to go thrifting if you're into that. All right. Well, any city, I'm sure, would have a good thrifting outlet if you really research it enough. All right, so inside Jake's thrift store now, we're drifting through this large warehouse full of furniture and road signs, guitars, instruments, posters, you know, all that good thrift store stuff. Lumber, tiles, sports equipment, anything and everything under the sun. Artsy woman in her 50s is staring at the upright piano, intrigued. Then she's checking the price tag. Artsy woman. Honey, what do you think of this? Artsy man in his 50s as well is strumming an acoustic guitar nearby. So this is kind of like the musical instrument section of the store. He walks over and he starts playing some rock and roll on the piano. For some reason I recommended Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run, or something like that, like an old, well, that's from the 80s or 70s, right? It's not that old. But I guess that would fit their age demographic. They're both in their 50s about. Anyway, Artsy man is playing this song, whatever rock and roll piano you want to play there. And he's smiling towards his wife, or the artsy woman. I don't know if they're actually married. Impressed by the piano sound, Artsy man, you always had a good eye. He's kind of impressed by the way it sounds. She rips the price tag off. Artsy woman, it's a little pricey though. He grabs the price tag from her. Artsy man, don't worry. I'll go smooth talk Jake. The bastard still owes me for those counterfeit coins I bought. He's walking towards Jake, who's behind the front register. Also near the register is this stoner man, you know, some stoner looking guy. And he's grabbing that samurai sword that was dug in Gary's locker. He's grabbing that samurai sword and he's kind of posing in the mirror, like standing with it. He pulls the sword out of the casing and he's like pretending to be a ninja, while Artsy man hands Jake the price tag behind him. Artsy man, hey Jake, what's your best on that piano back there? Jake, I could maybe come down a little, like 25 or so. Artsy man, 25? Come on, man. You sold me an entire booklet of completely fake silver dollars last week. Jake stares him down. Jake, well, I didn't know they were fake at the time, goddammit. Artsy man, that's besides the point. So a typical thrift store argument. I think I've heard arguments like that while in thrift stores in the past. People that really, that's their real source of income. Resellers, it's a big market if you could really develop a business like that, because it is competitive as well. All right, moving on. Flora's reflection appears in the mirror. So, yeah, that was the first time the piano was played. The guy who came over, the artsy man, he started playing the rock and roll song on the piano. So now Flora's in the store, and she's standing right behind the stoner man as he's doing his ninja moves. The man sees her in the mirror, and he freaks out. slowly backs away from the mirror, just as Artsy Man is resting his fist under his chin as he continues to negotiate with Jake. Artsy Man, could you maybe come down another 50 or so? Flora's bloody reflection steps out of the mirror towards the dazed stoner man. She now opens her mouth wide, and all these thick chunks of viscous blood shoot out towards him. So really disgusting blood. Maybe some of the bugs mixed in there as well. The stoner man turns his body in a panic and carelessly swings the samurai sword, unknowingly slicing right through Artsy Man's jugular. Another death. Artsy Man grabs his neck and gasps for air as the blood gushes out everywhere. So he's almost like mimicking Flora's ghost. Flora's ghost has this crazy gash on her neck and constantly like blood coming out of it. So he's also modeling that same type of appearance right now. The stoner man, now out of his daze, notices the bloody scene, drops the sword in a panic, and runs out of the store. So he's realizing he just killed this guy, and he's like, all right, I'm out of here. As Artsy Man is bleeding out on the floor. Unaware of the bloodshed, Artsy Woman sits at the piano, lost in a trance, as she plays a somber waltz. Flora watches her from behind, emotionless, not an inch of movement. All right. So we're on page 19, and we've already had a lot of death scenes. So we're moving quicker in this story. It's completely different temperature and mood as part one. This would not be a Robert Eggers type of an experience. This is more Final Destination, more of a. You could still get pretty dark with it, but I still get freaked out more by the first part myself personally. When you deal with the old pagan stuff, the old demonic blood rituals, that's the stuff that I would rather watch in horror movies. I did enjoy Final Destination when I watched it as a teenager, and maybe a movie called The Curve. There was a lot of those type of high school slasher films in a different style. I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream. That era of horror was a little bit different than Halloween and Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street and all those. That type of slasher kind of got corporatized into a more commercial brand. Scream's a fine movie. I'm not going to shit on Scream. I think it was pretty well done. I loved it as a kid. I Know What You Did Last Summer, and I think they made a sequel. Yeah, I was like 13. Of course I love those movies. Sarah Michelle Gellar and whoever the hell else. I forget who else was in those movies, but yeah, they were definitely enjoyable and entertaining and well made. But it had a different flavor than the 70s horror. Really, I'm just thinking of Halloween again. Completely different. That was like the indie slasher film. Basically, that's what it is, yeah. Halloween was Pavement. Scream was like Weezer, a more corporate commercial rock. I love Weezer too. I don't know, but I could probably think of a better example than Weezer. I don't know. Maybe Weezer became kind of more commercial as they went, but whatever. Let me move on. Now, so up to this story, let's retrace, see where we're at this point. We were following the path of this piano as it left Scotland, came to Philly, and we saw its path, and its path of destruction. Derek died, and then Doug and Gary died, and now this Artsy Man, this innocent dude, is dead because this stoner guy got freaked out by Flora. So there's been a lot of deaths now, and very odd kind of death scenes. Now we're going to meet Yannick. On page 19, we're finally meeting the real main character of this story. His name is Yannick. and he lives in a small bachelor pad. We're exploring his apartment now, and it's daytime. We're passing sheet music, a cello, electric guitar, various music textbooks, and a poster of the Philadelphia Orchestra. I named this character Yannick because I think the conductor, or the lead conductor of the Philadelphia Orchestra, I don't know if he's still there. His name was Yannick. And I just like that name. It's a cool name. It sounds like a hockey name. Maybe it's like Finnish or something. I don't know. Anyway, we're meeting Yannick. He's in his 30s. And he is playing his original classical composition on this shitty little keyboard, dressed in his boxers. He pauses and writes some notations onto the sheet music, then plays a bit more. But he can't quite get the melody to sound how he wants. He's now humming the melody to himself to get different variations, but it only adds to his frustration as he crumples up the sheet music and tosses it behind him. He then sighs and checks his alarm clock, which displays 8:59 a.m. Yannick quietly to himself, shit. He's quickly putting on some pants and shoes and crawling through the bedroom window. So this is our introduction to the main character now. And it's not normal to have a movie like this where you don't meet the main character until page 20, halfway through the script. But I think this works because up until this point, the main character was the piano. And those two characters will intersect going forward, which, it's not that hard to write a story like that, or to know it was going to go that direction. So, yeah, that's why I did it like this. I think it works in that it might not be exactly how it's supposed to be set in a correct structure of a screenplay. You have to introduce the main character by page 4 and whatever the fuck those rules are. It's not always like that. I don't know how to compare this to another movie besides Final Destination. And I say that because there's been a lot of small characters that have died so far. So we meet Yannick in his shitty little apartment. He's trying to compose some music in his boxer shorts. He realizes it's almost 9 a.m. and he quickly puts on some clothes and crawls out the bedroom window down the fire escape. And now we watch him going down the fire escape. And he's then running to the front of the building where he unlocks the door from the front. Alyssa, in her 30s, walks by with her daughter Jackie, who's about 8 years old. Alyssa: "Good morning, Yannick." Yannick fixes his hair and smiles towards them. Yannick: "Hey." Jackie is excited to see him. Yannick, can I be on drums today?" Yannick gently pats her head. Yannick: "Check the board, Jackie. Have to be fair to the others." She runs in. Jackie: "Bye, Mom." Alyssa: "Bye, sweetie." 3 more young students run inside. One of them, Henry, 8 years old, is a young punk kid with a mohawk, and he's patting Yannick hard on the stomach, knocking his wind out, as Alyssa giggles towards him. Alyssa: "Have fun today, Teach." Yannick struggles to get his breath back. Yannick: "Yep, always do. See you later." Yannick walks inside. A bit later, now we're inside his music school where Yannick's teaching 6 young students some instruments, and they're playing old secondhand instruments. So it's kind of a rundown. It's just his independent music school that he does to survive. So it's not very professional, I guess is the word. It's not going to blow anyone away. Jackie is on drums, Henry is playing the sax, and the other 4 students, who I didn't really bother to give names to, I don't think they have any lines in this, are just playing electric guitar, bass guitar, piano, and tambourine. Regrettably, Jackie is the only one with any musical talent. And it appears Yannick knows this all too well. As he sits in a chair yawning, his thoughts on the melody he was trying to work on earlier in his apartment. He's attempting to hum that original melody to himself again through all of the uncoordinated racket of the students, while Jackie waves towards him, knocking him out of his daze. Jackie, Yannick, check it out. She plays a rather impressive drum solo, while Henry appears jealous by her talent. Henry to Jackie, stop showing off for the teacher, kiss ass. He makes kissy noises towards her with his lips, while Jackie runs out the front door crying, and Yannick rises in frustration. Yannick, Henry, why? You know Jackie is sensitive. Henry, this is Philly, bro. Gotta have a thick skin. Yannick opens the front door, then stares back towards the chaotic music being played by the other students. Yannick, Henry, you're in charge until I get back. He walks out the door to find Jackie as Henry tosses the sax to the floor, gets behind the drum set, and plays them like a wild animal. Like the animal from the Muppets. Like he just punk kid with a mohawk and he's just going nuts on the drums. Alright, a few hours later, inside the music school, Yannick is at the piano bench playing a joyous waltz on his old tattered keyboard that he must have got from his room. Jackie sits beside him, the only student left to be picked up. Yannick, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Jackie claps along as he counts and plays. Yannick, now you give it a try. Jackie, but I never played before. Yannick, don't worry. You have plenty of time to practice over your summer vacation. Jackie presses down on some of the random keys. Yannick, look how good you got on the drums after just a few weeks. He plays a C minor chord as Alyssa walks in. Yannick is talking to Jackie at the piano. This is the minor C. Alyssa, I'm so sorry, Yannick. Got caught up and totally lost track of time. Yannick, it's fine. Second batch of Rugrats don't come until 3. Jackie, Mom, look. Jackie plays the C minor chord. Yannick to Jackie, see, I knew you were a natural. Alyssa, I forget how to pronounce this now. I think it was Alyssa. Alyssa bends over next to Yannick and hits a key. Alyssa, good memories. Used to play when I was a little girl. Yannick, must be where Jackie gets her ear. She leans in closer to him and plays a short jazz piece. Alyssa, our family had a nice grand in the living room. We all had to take lessons for a week and then decide on our own if we wanted to continue. She ends her short performance with a fancy piano run. Alyssa, I chose to continue. Ended up playing for about 4 more years. Yannick, it shows. They share a flirtatious smile. Alyssa, guess you never really forget. Yannick then rises and the two walk towards the front door. Yannick, I'm looking to get my hands on a real piano. I think the kids would respond to it better than this piece of junk. Jackie hits some more of the keys. Alyssa, come on, Jackie, time to wrap it up. Jackie, whiny, but Mom. Alyssa, stop whining. We can go shopping for a keyboard later. And you can play all day and night in your room, okay? Jackie nods, smiles wide, and hugs her mom. As Yannick opens the front door, Alyssa, you know, I know this place in the Northeast, warehouse, kind of hidden, full of all kinds of treasures. I heard it's going out of business. Yannick, sounds like my kind of place. Brief pause. Alyssa, You got any classes tomorrow? All right, let me continue, I guess. Should I keep going or stop here? I'm going to stop here. When we continue, I think it's a good place to stop. We met all the characters now. When we come back, we're going to be on the bottom of page 23. We're going to find out how the piano is going to involve itself in Yannick's life now, as well as Elisa, and as well as Jackie. I always seem to put children in these horror stories, but I think it's called for because it's going back to the beginning of part 1 with Hilda and Flora as 8-year-old kids. That's why I decided to do that. And plus, Yannick is a teacher. He's a music teacher teaching kids music, so I needed to have children as a part of this story. And I'm going to stop here. But when we come back, I stopped here because it's kind of a good place. It's kind of the midpoint of this story. We just met Yannick, we just met Jackie, and we just met Elisa, and they're going to carry the flow of the rest of these 20 pages or so. So it's a good place to stop. I think I did a decent job today of not being so long-winded in some of these analyses, because I tend to do that. As I went through this, believe me, this is the first time I've read this in like over a year, and it's still a part of me, and because I did write this many different versions of this story, from having one long screenplay to splitting it up into 2 parts. It took a long time, man. And my main concern right now is just to make this story make sense. Part 1, my main concern also involved that, because you're dealing with Scotland and you don't know Scottish folklore as well as maybe I should have researched. So I want to make sure there's no plot holes in this story I'm imagining. But while I'm also doing that, I want to be accurate about the history and what people expect in a horror movie, because horror fans could be the most critical sometimes if the movie doesn't do it, or there are some plot holes that don't make sense. You're going to hear about it. The Nostalgia Critic on YouTube, he's pretty good. He'll pick apart movies like that and also talk about movies that he loves. But I would hire that dude, the Nostalgia Critic, or the Angry Video Game Nerd, AVGN. I would hire both of those guys, because I think they actually work together sometimes, to give advice on a story like this. Both of those characters on YouTube, if you never heard of them, go check them out. They're really good. I heard of the Angry Video Game Nerd a long time ago, and he was one of my guilty pleasures. Like, instead of being on Instagram for 24 hours straight, I would just be on YouTube watching Angry Video Game Nerd all day. Like, every one of his episodes, they're so addicting, man. He's got millions and millions of views for a reason. He's the Angry Atari Sega Nerd. Yeah, go check him out. Go check out the Nostalgia Critic. They're both very popular. Like, they're not underground people. They're both very popular. So I would hire those 2 guys to be a part of this as consultants, because if there's anything really stupid about this story, they would let me know right away. They'd be like, this doesn't work, because they've seen way more horror movies than I have. The Angry Video Game Nerd, he does a bit about old horror movies. He's a big fan of the old monster movies. I never went down those rabbit holes, the old Frankensteins and Wolfman and Nosferatu. I never went down those old black and white films. And I don't know, it just doesn't, I guess if you don't do it as a kid, you never really want to. I watched The Addams Family as a kid. I do remember The Addams Family. I do remember The Munsters a little bit. but not to a huge degree. Like, I never got into those old monster flicks that were on late at night sometimes. So yeah, that's my main concern. You could hear it in my voice as I'm reading some of these scenes. I'm thinking in my other, at the same time I'm reading, I'm thinking, does this make sense? People are going to ask questions about this. Because I don't want to have any holes at all. I want to set up this story that people won't get angry. Like, this is bad writing. There's an obvious plot hole here. Because I got mad, and I do get mad when I watch a movie that doesn't make sense like that to an obvious degree. I'm not going to mention anything, talk shit about stuff, but yeah, it is it's something I think about when I write a story specifically like this. When you're dealing with the spirit world, well, sometimes they can see the ghost, sometimes they can't. That doesn't make sense. Heck, whatever, man. It's a fucking spirit. She can do whatever she wants, basically. Or maybe only certain people, like Sixth Sense, can see these ghosts. I don't know. You can kind of justify anything you want, which is the beauty of horror, because you can let your imagination run free with it. But you're still concerned with a lot of I was going to say the feedback. If I was holding a focus group, or like movies do, they would have a focus group and see what characters the people like and what story parts the people really like. Almost like during a presidential debate, CNN or Fox would have 30 people or so in a room with those little devices where they hit the button when they like something the person said, and then they can hit another button when they don't like it, and then they kind of monitor that. It's probably just some propaganda mode, but it's that same type of an experience like that. A focus group, whether for a television series or a movie, and this is kind of both, really. It can be either or for something like this. These characters aren't going to show up in any other episodes. But yeah, if you want to make a comparison to this type of atmosphere, it's Final Destination, and I really can't think of any other movies at this point. Hold on one second. So yeah, what was I talking about? Sorry. When you write a story like this that deals with the occult or spirit world and a ghost, it could get weird. There's rules, but there's not really rules. Really, the only rules I'm looking at is from other movies I've consumed since I was a kid, and that's the physics of the spirit world. Vigo from Ghostbusters 2. That dude freaked me the fuck out. Speaking of weird visuals that haunted me as a kid, it was like Howard the Duck. Because that thing was freaky looking. I don't know. I know that was like a comedy, but it kind of freaked me out as well. And Vigo from Ghostbusters 2 always freaked me out. But yeah, this is Final Destination. This is my version of it. It's not what I intended to do, but that's what it became, kind of. Because you're showing all these death scenes, and is everybody gonna die, or some people don't die. Once the audience kind of knows that it's the piano that's summoning Flora back from her spirit world or whatever. Final Destination, similar movies. I was just gonna see if there's any other movies I've watched in the past that kind of relate to this story. Not really. I'm way out. When it comes to modern horror movies, I'm very out of the loop, man. I haven't heard of any of these. Truth or Dare, Polaroid, Happy Earth Day, or Happy Death Day to you. No, I haven't seen any of these. I've never heard of these movies. I've heard of M. Night Shyamalan, Old. I did see that. That was pretty good. Escape Room? No, I never saw that. Dark Water? No. Yeah, I haven't seen any of these movies. I kind of feel like The Skeleton Key, that sounds familiar, but I don't think I've ever seen that. Insidious, I never saw that either. I'm just listing movies now. I was trying to think of movies like Final Destination, but I can't really think of too many. Or I can't think of any. Maybe Reddit. Let's go to Reddit. Cube, never saw that. Triangle, It Follows, I've seen. That was an amazing movie. Cabin in the Woods, also amazing movie. Two really good classics. Um, Cabin in the Woods, yeah, that was a weird movie. Very fucked up. Um, there's another one I'm thinking of, but all right, I'm just gonna waste time now. So yeah, there's a lot of horror movies that I have not really kept up with. I did see shit. See, even the titles I kind of forget now. Best horror movies of the last few years. Let's see what comes up. Best horror movies of the 2020s. Let's go with that. And I bet you I don't know any of these. Yeah, Quiet Place, never saw. The Gorge, never heard of. The Craft, they did that again. All right, I did see Gretel and Hansel. I did say that was awesome. Escape Room, Quiet Place, I never saw. Yeah, so I'm out of the loop. I'm not going to pretend to be a huge horror fan because I don't know anything in modern day cinema. I did see the Babadook. Is that what it was called? That was pretty good. But there was another one that was. It's really gonna bug me because I can't think. Or Barbarian. Thank you. Rotten Tomatoes saved me on that one. Barbarian was really fucking good. I'm not gonna ruin that if you never saw it because that was one of my favorites. Um, yeah, I'm looking at Rotten Tomatoes now, looking at some of the best horror movies of this decade, and I haven't seen any of these, man. I was way out of the loop. Like I never even heard of these titles. But I also feel like a lot of these are just carbon cutouts of other movies. How many are really original is what I would ask somebody who's more involved with this genre. But yeah, Barbarian was really good. Barbarian was probably the last one I saw. Megan, no, I didn't see that. That was just like child's play, like another rehash of that. There was another one too about like these evil stuffed animals. So a lot of it does get recycled. Barbarian was from 2022. Wow, it's surprising. It's only the 25th best of the last decade or whatever. That would be my number one, but to be fair, I never even watched any of these other ones. But Babadook was pretty cool. I like stuff like that. All right. What else can I really talk about? It was definitely easier reading through this second part than the first one. So that's helpful. Yeah, I really need to get back on the horror viewing because I haven't seen any of these fucking movies from 2020 on. I've never even heard of these. Well, I got rid of Netflix. I got rid of Hulu. I got rid of Amazon Prime, so I don't have any streaming service right now. And the only time I watch movies is when it's like on to rent and I could get it for like $2. Then it's like worth it for me. Unless it's a movie that really stands out. Like I had to buy that movie Strozek, the Werner Herzog, because that one really connected with me. But Yeah, it's not like it was when I was a kid where you would have to go infinity pool. All right, that was pretty good. Alexander Skarsgård, Cronenberg, yeah, Mia Goth. She's in a couple horror movies. That was actually pretty good. I was thinking about that one. Um, it's one of the psychological type of psychological horror, Infinity Pool from 2023. But yeah, I'm gonna have to catch up on some of these. But yeah, I really don't know how else to describe this type of an experience than Final Destination. And there's probably been like 8 of those. How many Final Destinations have there been? I'm guessing it's at least 5, right? How many? I'll put the over under at 5. How many Final Destination movies are there? All right, it's over. It's actually 1, 2, 3, 6. The last one was last year. It's almost like Halloween. Final Destination, Final Destination 2, Final Destination 3. The Final Destination is the 4th one. I thought we already came to the Final Destination, but that's the final one. Then there's Final Destination 5 in 2011. And then the last one was just called Final Destination Bloodlines. How original. From 2025. All right. I'm sure I bet you it's actually good. It got 92% Rotten Tomatoes. So take that for what you will. 7 out of 10 on IMDb. Maybe it's actually good. I don't know. I just figure by the time a franchise gets to 6 or 7, it's probably time to cut ties with it, but who knows? All right. I guess I'll end it here, make it a little bit shorter than I usually do, which isn't a bad thing. Maybe I'll have time now to take a little break and then come back and read the rest of it. So I'll do that now. I think in this little break in between, I might listen to some podcasts about the best horror movies of the last 5, 6 years. So maybe I can make a list. I am way out of the loop with movies in general and television series. I used to be more on point with new series and stuff like that, but because I'm trying to do other stuff, I kind of get ADD with that stuff now. Even with music, you ask me what the best albums of this year are, I really can't name anything. I might have listened to just 4 or 5 albums that were Juliana Barwick. She had an album this year with Mary Lattimore, and that was really good. That was probably my favorite of the year so far. But I don't keep up with modern culture anymore, popular culture, or what's hot in entertainment. I just don't keep up with it like I used to. And I guess that's normal as you get older. Some people it's just because they have kids, but for me, I'm just trying to build something in that industry. So I really should be paying attention to it, but I sit down and try to watch a movie or listen to an album, and then my head goes somewhere else. So right now, I'm not really in that space. I'm trying to move across the country. I'm trying to find a job before I move across the country. And then all the other logistics of not having a car and how am I going to get around wherever I move to. It's a lot for somebody who hasn't made a move like that, it could be kind of an intimidating thing, but I'm kind of welcoming it with open arms as soon as I can get a job and move out to the West Coast. So yeah, I'm not really at that. I guess I was more relaxed in the past. When you have a job, you have an income source, and you have that routine. you know you have to do this and that throughout the week, and then you can get money. It makes your life a little bit more secure and stable, and you can budget your entertainment cost as well after you have a lifestyle like that. For me, I was stupid. I would just waste a lot of money on gambling and shit. All right, so this is my list on AOTY. I've listened to 3 albums this year. Juliana Barwick, Mary Lattimore, which is really good, Tragic Magic. I listened to Rydian. I don't know how to say his last name. He's the bass player from Joy Formidable. He had an album out called AD.UN.IAD. I don't know if you're supposed to pronounce that. I don't know. It was pretty good. If you're a fan of Joy Formidable, you probably would like that. You probably have heard it already. But also, the lead singer has an album coming out maybe this month or next month. She's been sharing like a couple songs at a time. And the other one I've heard is Alton Gun. I always say it wrong. Alton Gun Garrett from 2026, from February 2026. So yeah, I have not kept up with anything from this year. But they were all good. I only saved stuff that I would listen to again, and those are my 3 favorite of the year so far. Last year I probably listened to close to 200 albums. It's probably not going to happen this year. I probably won't have the patience to do it again. But according to AOTY, which is a good source of learning about what's hot, because they go through all the genres. Let's see if I know any of these bands. Neurosis, nope. Underscores, nope. Cryptic Shift, nope. The Twilight Sad, I kind of know them because they're Scottish and they're kind of like shoegaze, but I don't really know them that well. Converge, I've heard of. They're kind of like hard metal. Immolation, never heard of. At the Gates. Mitski, alright, that's one person that I know Mitski pretty well. But Tinariwen, yeah, okay, that's like that desert rock from Africa. I've gotten into them over the years. So yeah, really, I'm just proving that right in Mandy, Indiana, I've kind of heard them. But a lot of these bands I've never heard of. Alright, there you go. Angine de Poutren, that weird duo. I've checked them out. Ray, I've heard of them. Or heard of her from England, I think. Raye. No shit. Alright. So there's a lot of stuff I have to catch up on. Most likely I won't be doing those lists. I doubt it, because I would want to hear at least 100, 200 albums to make a fair judgment of what my favorite albums were. If I'm only listening to like 20, 30, 40 albums, I don't think I have the right to really say, these were the best albums of the year. I would probably just say, these were my favorite albums that I've heard this year. And I still feel weird because I'm neglecting to listen to what everyone else is promoting. And I should at least give it a chance and see what it's like. So, yeah, it's weird like that. But my head's just in other places. Usually the last 2 years I would wait till November, December, and then binge it all. Be like, all right, these are the 50 best rap albums. Let me get a flavor of these. The best heavy metal. Let me listen to these, so on and so on. And really my goal after this project, I have six more episodes to do. This is episode 6. So 7 more. No, 6 more, sorry. There's 12 episodes. So after this episode, there's 6 more to read through and analyze. After I'm done with this, maybe I could have more time to do something like that, as I'm also thinking about everything else in my life. But I I said in the beginning of this, I wanted to do at least something productive today, and whether I come back for part two in a couple hours or if I do it tomorrow, at least I started this process of getting back into this universe. It's a much more easily accessible type of a script, even though I'm talking about plot holes that might be there, dealing with the spirit world and all that. It's a much easier script to produce and to act for the actors in this script. There's a lot of the first 20 pages. There is no lead actors really. We start with Derek and Joanna, but they only survive for maybe 6-7 pages, and then we move on to Celia. We move on to Doug and Gary. We move on to Yannick and Elisa, and Jackie for the rest of this. So you don't really get a lot of good roles besides those three characters. The only good roles for an actor really is those three, from Jackie, Elisa, and Yannick, because they have most of the speaking parts now for the rest of these 20 pages. So it's a weird type of a script. I was thinking about this when I first wrote it, like, why would somebody want to play Doug? They're in it for like 5 minutes and then they die. But so what? You still get to be in a cool movie. It's still a cool supporting role to show this. How many people get to be in a movie and get a cool death scene like that? So yeah, just that alone should be a motivation. Even if you don't, it's not a role for a leading man, whatever. Like, it's still a pretty cool role though. And I think Black Mirror did a good job with that. Black Mirror got a lot of like really A-list actors, John Hamm, Salma Hayek, but most of them had, lead roles. It's not like they were only in the episode for 5-10 minutes. The Salma Hayek one was pretty good. And yeah, so this is with a much different writing experience than the first part of this story. If you look at the first part, it's not that dissimilar though. We followed the Druids and the Romans to Ada and Asheen, and then we got to Hilda and Layden and Flora and Bridget by maybe page 14 or 15. So it's kind of similar. The real story didn't start until almost the middle of the script with the real characters, the main characters. So maybe that's a mirror effect. That's kind of interesting. But to be honest, you don't really know until if a company would buy these two scripts or buy this whole series. How I was trying to sell this entire season for like $1 million. That was my way of feeling like it was worth all the work. And if I would sell this entire series for $1 million, 12 episodes that I've read so far, I've read 6 now, and 6 more to go. I would sell that whole thing, and you would have the rights to this entire series. It's like buying the rights to the Twilight Zone or The Outer Limits or Black Mirror when it first started. I don't think that's a crazy price. You're getting the rights to the series to distribute it worldwide to streaming sites. I'm probably underselling this, but I'm just one man doing this, and $1 million sounds like, all right, I could actually build a future with that. So I think it's a good starting asking price, and whatever it would go from there. But yeah, that's my vision. I would sell this entire series for $1 million after taxes and all that shit, whatever I'm left with. Then I could do my Kickstarter project, which my Kickstarter was to move to New Mexico or Arizona, buy my own land, build a shipping container home studio where it would be my headquarters for this Compass Charlatan Publishing It would be where I write my screenplays, and going forward, collaborating with other people. Since I'm maybe on the West Coast, it gives me more opportunity. And also, because I'm in the privacy of this desert land that's kind of remote, off the grid, running on fucking solar panels, then I would also be able to record music finally. And that's more of a long conversation, to learn the production, to get the right equipment, because I'm doing this all myself. It's a risky proposition, but why not? I think it would be an interesting, almost like reality show. That's how I would present it. Once a week or twice a week, I would make YouTube videos and kind of document my process and see how long it takes me to make an album. That first album is going to be incredibly tough. I got to train myself to sing and play while dealing with all this other bullshit that I've had to deal with throughout these last 5-6 years. Finally put those demons to bed and do what I want to do for the rest of my life. It's not going to be an easy thing in the beginning, but I'm the routine guy. Once I get into a routine, in this type of mode, I could become a crazy workaholic. And that's what I really see it becoming. I already have the songs. I already have the music. All I need to do is find a way to record it in a good enough fashion that people would want to listen to it. And I think I can get there, because a lot of people do. If I always point to Nirvana, they recorded Bleach in like a weekend or whatever it was. You hear about a lot of punk bands recording albums very quickly because they're not concerned about being polished and putting all these special effects on it. No effects. And that's what I'm aiming for most of these albums. So yeah, that's where I'm at. My goal was always to sell the screenplays. That's where I'm making my money. That's my income, and then use that money to grow my business. It just hasn't happened. For whatever reason, I can't get enough attention towards this. It's a lot of bullshit that I've had to deal with that I try to ignore, but it's always there because it doesn't get resolved. There's a lot of bullshit that I've had to try to evaporate from my consciousness because it's just annoying. I wrote a song called "Cunty People Are Boring" a couple years ago, or maybe last summer. Cunty people, cunty people, cunty people are boring. And all I mean by that is just people who, drama seekers. That was verse 2, yeah, drama seekers. The people who want drama in their life and manipulate other people because they don't know how to create something themselves, or they just don't have anything else to do. They just fuck with other people's lives, fuck with other people's mental health, and they do it with a smile on their face. It's a sickness, it's a narcissism. So I've had to deal with a lot of that shit, and it's kind of still in my life, but not like it was before. It's in my life still because I think about it still. I can't just move on and create, or at least chase my dream like I have it planned out in my head. And yeah, that's where I'm trying to get to. Hopefully this gets me a little closer. At least gets me, if I'm not going to see money anytime soon, it gets me more comfortable speaking about the vision for this series, the vision for each episode. If I was trying to have a writer's meeting or to meet with the director of this episode or the actors, how would I give them their motivation for these characters and these scenes to try to give the director better guidance and whatever he or she wants to do? Like, that's why I'm doing this. That's why I call these table reads, even though it's just me talking my bullshit to myself. But I'm gonna leave it here for real this time. I'll come back in a couple hours and I'll explore part 2, and we'll finally finish, get to the conclusion of the Wraith's Refrain and see where everyone ends up. Is it a happy ending? I think it'll be mixed opinions on how I concluded this saga, and yeah, come back. I'll try to finish this in a couple hours.